Hey, family, so good to be with you, and thank you for continuing this journey with us. Like we mentioned during the offering period today, we are excited, looking forward to journeying with you in person on August the 1st. We are preparing right now. Pastor Tiffany is putting together a registration form that we'll be doing through your various mobile devices. And we'll also have a call-in registration line for those of you who don't have access to a mobile device, because we want this opening experience to be barrier free. So thank you for just being part of our extended family, and thank each of you for the love you have continued to send this way from one week to the next. And as we continue this one word that can change your life, today's word is really specific to this day we are celebrating on this Father's Day. Today's word is fatherhood. Fatherhood, like neighborhood fatherhood. And for those of you who are on the fatherhood journey, this word is for you. For those who are witnessing the fatherhood journey, this word is for you as well. I'm going to use a passage of scripture that's a familiar Bible story. Many of you remember Daniel in the lion's den. That's the passage we're going to look at today, found in Daniel chapter 6, verses maybe 19 through 24. So here we go. I'm reading. Then at break of day, the king got up and hurried to the den of lions. When he came near the den where Daniel was, he cried out anxiously to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you faithfully serve, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Daniel then said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king. I have done no wrong." Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up and out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. The king gave a command, and those who had accused Daniel were brought and thrown into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. Before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones into pieces. Wow. That's heavy. Fatherhood is the word. There has always been something missing about Father's Day. It doesn't have the same bells and whistles that Mother's Day historically has possessed. There are no special Father's Day brunches to speak of. Hallmark says that fathers might sell. There might be about 90 million cards sold for Father's Day, when 150 million cards are sold for Mother's Day. And when we think about this entire experience around how fathers have been kind of in the margins over the years, I'm reminded as a father myself how very challenging it is to be a father. I was reflecting on something I came across as I was preparing for this message, and it talks about how we encounter our fathers throughout the stages of development in our lives. And here, just take a look at it. It's on the screen. At 4 years old, okay, and this is kind of facetious, but kind of true as well. At 4 years old, my dad knew everything, okay? At 7 years old, my dad knows a lot. At 12 years old, my dad doesn't know everything per se. At 21 years old, that man doesn't know anything. At 25 years old, he knows a little about some things. At 30 years old, I must find out, we would think, I must find out what my dad thinks about this. At 40 years old, I wonder what, we would tell ourselves, I wonder what dad would have done in this situation. At 50 years old, we discover our dads were geniuses. At 60 years old, I wish I could talk to my dad to just chat with him one more time. And now at my 65 years, I hope my daughters know that me being a father was really on the job training. I realized I didn't know what I was doing. And I've actually been able to come to terms with the fact that I even made probably some, well, not probably, I made some mistakes as a father. I did. And my daughters, Morgan and Ryan, and I have been able to discuss some of those. As a matter of fact, I remember telling them recently, and when we were all together a couple of months ago, that one of my in extreme anxieties in terms of the things that I felt I really needed them to know with great urgency, and it always felt like great urgency, was because I never really expected to live long enough to see them grow up. And here I am now at 65, and they're grown and reflecting on all of those missed opportunities. But along the way, the other reality is the older that we get as men, we also realize how very hard it is to be a man in this society. And if you add any of the outliers into the difficulty in being a man, like being black, being marginalized as a result of being black, being feared as a result of being a black man, even having opportunities minimized, then we realize that as a father, to compound all of that is one more thing. I was at a retreat. I was reflecting with Juanita recently. This retreat, we were at a marriage retreat about 32 years ago. We've been married for 36 now. About 32 years ago, we were at a marriage retreat, and our now dear friends, Dr. Joe and Dr. Yolande Heron-Palmore, were the facilitators. And in this retreat, this marriage retreat, the husbands went to one room with Dr. Joe, and the wives went another direction with Dr. Yolande. And in that room with Dr. Joe, there were about 30 black men. We were all there. And Dr. Joe pulled out a board, and in those days, it was chalk, y'all, okay? And on that chalkboard, Dr. Joe wrote one word. He wrote the word man on the board. And then he asked the brothers who were in the room, he said, okay, tell me what comes to mind when you see that word on the board. And the brothers started kind of, ringing out from different parts of the room, provider and protector and gatherer and, those kinds of words, encourager. And then Dr. Joe stopped for a moment and wrote on the board black in front of that word man. And there was kind of a quiet across the room. And when that quiet hit that room, Dr. Joe asked the next question, and that was, what comes to mind now that the words are black man? And words like endangered and hunted words like oppressed, troubled. And the difference between those two expressions of man really only dealt with the race of man. You know, when I think about this challenge that we find ourselves in, I realize that you know, in the reason that I chose this Daniel story today is because I believe Daniel offers some poignant suggestions to us thriving in circumstances that are completely against our control, and the possibility of winning in spite of those circumstances being aimed at us losing. You see, when I think about this Daniel story, I'm reminded of these two photos that are on the screen right now. One is a photo from the 60s where a group of sanitation workers in Memphis were reminding the world that they too were men. And then we take that second photo and the anguish of that brother who was protesting the death in Minneapolis of the young brother who was shot by the police, and some say because of an air freshener hanging from his mirror. So however we approach this, we realize that Daniel succeeded in the midst of odds that weren't necessarily in his favor. When we think about Daniel in this context, we realize that Daniel's faithfulness landed him in a den of lions. And in the midst of being in that den of lions, it was his faithfulness that gave him passage out of that den of lions. There are three things I'm going to tell you today, and I'm not going to take much more time, but there are three things I want to tell you today that you will need in order to be a successful man or father. These three things are things that I have learned along the way, things I have experienced as a result of being a man and who happens to be black, and things that I believe that we can all rally around as we move through this text. Because remember, Daniel had every reasons to fail, as the Bible reminds us that while he was still in captivity and in enemy territory, God gave him 4 positions of service under 4 different kings, and not because he was necessarily in the right place at the right time, but because he knew these 3 key elements that to success that I'm going to share with you as we move through this text today. First thing I want to tell you is that Daniel knew who he was, and as a successful father, that he had to be disciplined in order to succeed. Now when I think about discipline, there are lots of definitions of discipline, but what I want to tell you is in this passage we see in verse 3, because I'm going to go back to the beginning of this text. In verse 3, it says, "Soon Daniel distinguished himself above all the other presidents and satraps because of an excellent spirit was in him." An excellent spirit was in him. I'm actually equating that excellent spirit to discipline. And in other words, I have learned that practice can be considered a discipline, but not all discipline is a byproduct of practice. Now follow me on that. In other words, you can practice shooting basketballs. You can practice turning flips. You can practice singing. But if you ask LeBron, Simone Biles, and Beyonce, was it practice that necessarily, those 2 hours or 3 hours that made them the greats that they are, I'm sure they would tell you the practice was necessary, but it was the discipline that made them great. You see, when we look at discipline, we realize that discipline is the activity of governing the things that are within your power and control while preparing you to do something that is beyond your power or control. Let me say that one more time. Somebody was eating grits when I said that. Let me hit that one more time. Discipline is the activity of governing the things that are within your control, all right, while preparing you to do something that is beyond your control. And as a result of discipline, we know that discipline requires a made-up mind, even when it is uncomfortable. Imagine this, getting up in the morning when you really want to stay asleep, when you know you got something to do out there, requires discipline. Going to work at a job you don't necessarily like, but knowing that you have a goal at the end of that 40-hour week requires discipline. Refraining from eating all of the wrong stuff that you know ain't good for you while being in the midst of all of that stuff in the meantime requires discipline. Doing the right thing while no one is watching requires discipline. So when we think about how discipline prepares us for an opportunity to literally achieve something that we might not have been prepared to achieve other than being disciplined, we realize that Daniel was disciplined, and as a result of his discipline, 4 kings saw that in him and gave him the opportunity that the only way he would have gotten that opportunity is as a result of demonstrating. And at the core of discipline is knowing your purpose. So as you listen to this morning, I want you to reflect on what you think your purpose is, and as you reflect on what you think your purpose is, I want you to also think about how in the midst of this purpose of ours, do we manifest in the world around us? So think about this. But last year during the peak of the pandemic, Anthony Bourdain, my favorite TV chef, committed suicide. Now the friends of Anthony's friends said, they didn't understand it. He was in the midst of filming a new series. He was at the peak of his career. He was in love with the woman of his life, of his dreams. And there were things about Anthony's life from the outside, all right, that appeared for him to have had everything together, but without really knowing where Anthony was in his purpose. Ultimately, somewhere along the way, he convinced himself that he no longer had a purpose here on earth. And that's why you've got to be careful. And that's one thing that Pastor Juanita has helped us to understand along the way. And I'm putting them on the screen right now so we can reflect on them for a moment. And these are ways of determining your purpose in a few minutes with a few questions. Number one, you've got to ask the question, who am I? You got to ask the question, what do I love to do? Number three, you've got to ask, who do I do it for? Number four, and what do they need? And number five, how will they be transformed when I do what I love? You see those on the screen? Let's look at them one more time. Who am I? What do I love to do? Who do I do it for? What do they need? And how will they be transformed when I do what I love? You better know who you are and where it is you want to give your energy to. Otherwise, you will lose purpose. And at the other side of losing purpose is losing a reason for living. So as we look at this text, we also know number two, and I'm going to put it on the screen. And number two is you better know who you are. we know Daniel knew who he was because he was confronted with what I identify as the three kinds of people in the world: the conformers, the informers, and the transformers. The conformers are the folk who want you to live down to their expectation. And in essence, if they have a dull and boring life, they want you to have a dull and boring life. If they have no goals and expectations, they want you to have no goals and expectations. But you can't live down to other people's expectations and live up to your own expectations at the same time. That's why your expectations, the expectations you have for yourself, have to exceed what anybody around you think you need to be doing for yourself. I've learned that along the way in my own life. As I journeyed through life, I would imagine there are a few people hoping and praying that I fail, all right? There are probably a few people who think I've had too many opportunities, all right? There are probably a few people who say, why does Rudy always get the breaks? Well, Rudy does not always get the breaks. Rudy has not always been given opportunities, but here's the deal. Rudy knows when that opportunity doesn't always knock, but when it does, you better knock the hell out of opportunity. Otherwise, you will be on the sidelines with all of the other folk who said, man, I wish I could. Conformers. Informers are like the satraps in this text. Informers are the people who have no business of their own, but will make your business their business. The informers. I think about these informers. I'm reminded how King Darius, and all of the folk around that were the satraps that went to King Darius on Daniel's activity of prayer were really people who were envious of Daniel's favor. And we think about Daniel's favor in this text, we also realize that the informers are people who don't necessarily go to someone with a good word about you. Matter of fact, the word is if somebody if a dog brings you a bone, that dog will also take a bone away, right? That's why you got to be careful when people decide to make you the person they talk about XYZ person with. And the last are the transformers. And if we think about the transformers, those are the folk like Daniel who make it happen around themselves. And that's what I'm encouraging you to be today, a transformer. Romans 12:2 says, to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And what does it look like really to renew your mind? It looks like to take control of your thinking so that you will be able to move your thinking to another level. And in the process of moving your thinking to another level, change the atmosphere around you. This third point, fathers who live in the lion's den had better know how to call on God. Yeah. Imagine this. Calling on God got Daniel in trouble, right? But it was also calling on God that got Daniel out of that lion's den without any lion teeth prints in his flesh. We think about this calling on God, we realize that the difference between the Daniel story and many of our stories is that we weren't necessarily thrown into the lion's den. In many cases, we were born in the lion's den. The lion's den of racism, the lion's den of self-hatred, the lion's den of scarcity, the lion's den of doubt and inferiority. And when we think about those lion's dens that we were born into, we realize that the only way that we can escape, because remember, the enemy had no intentions of you escaping that den. His plan was that situation would determine your entire life and future. But the only way to escape that den is to call on God. And the only way we can do that is to realize that as tragic or traumatic as the occurrences in your life might have seemed while they were taking place, you are sitting here today clothed in your right mind, sitting up, taking nourishment by mouth. Because all of those who prayed for your failure failed in their attempt to stop your progress and to stop you from succeeding. You know, as I close today, I want you to know that what we've got to do, what we've really got to do is we've really just got to stop and pray. And in the midst of that stopping and praying, we realize that the power that has always been with us, and the power that has moved us through those various challenges in life and throughout life, has been as a result of either our willingness to call on God or someone's willingness to call on God on our behalf. As we think about how calling on God can make a difference, we realize that there are some things that we can do also as we call on God for our own freedom and those around us. You know, just recently I was reflecting as I close. I was reflecting on just my life, and boy, y'all, you know, many of you have been journeying with me for a while, and you know, this has been an interesting journey. And one thing I've realized that there are some takeaways that I want to just share with each of you, male or female, today. That I want to just really kind of, pour into your souls before I take my seat. These are several things that I have learned that I believe have contributed to my life and life success. Number one, I've believed for some time that friends are the people who will come sit with you in a dark place until the light comes on. I want to thank all of those of you who are my friends today over the years for sitting with me in those dark places at times. Number two, that life is short enough. Savor every freaking moment. Because it is. Thirdly, most of the stuff we worry about is tied to our egos. Can I say this? Let that go. Fourthly, love is the pure act of embracing the mystery in those we encounter on life's journey without any expectation of reciprocity. Next, money is good, accolades are encouraging, accomplishments are cool, and possessions can be fun to hold and have. But they are only worth what they can be used to improve the lives of those around us. And lastly, I share this often. My friend, Pastor Joe Wilson, reminded me one day as he was transitioning, trusting God with all my heart and lean not to my own understanding, but in all my ways acknowledge God, and God will direct my path. That's what I want to tell you today. Trusting God with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge God, and God will direct your path. Happy Father's Day, y'all. God bless you.